Welcome to Reputation Revolution. This is the podcast where we help individuals like you to establish your voice in the marketplace, enhance the credibility of that voice, extend the reach of your story and your message, and finally, extract value from your efforts in building a meaningful personal brand that's both recognized and respected. Now, on with the show.
Web3, the Metaverse, virtual reality, NFTs, AI, blockchain, and let's not forget cryptocurrency and digital wallets. You've heard the terms, folks, but what do they all mean? How do they relate to one another? And importantly, when it comes to building a professional personal brand, growing your profile and enhancing your reputation in the marketplace, what role can Web3 and the Metaverse play in all of this? Stick around because we have an expert in the space to guide us through the Web3 jungle. His name is Mitch Jackson. He's an award-winning litigation lawyer from California who is renowned for being ahead of the pack when it comes to all things social media and digital marketing, and now Web3 and the Metaverse. Mitch also runs a consultancy called Maneuver, which shows creators, entrepreneurs, and business owners how to leverage Web3 and the Metaverse to create unique brands, new opportunities, and drive additional lanes of revenue. There is a lot happening in this space. And as business owners, professionals, thought leaders, and content creators, we need to stay in touch with what's going on so we can adapt quickly and see opportunities as they arise. This is a bumper episode, folks. Let's get the lowdown from Mitch right now. Mitch Jackson coming to us all the way from Orange County in California. Welcome to the Reputation Revolution, my friend.
Trevor, it's really good to be with you and your community this morning here in Southern California. It's great to see you, and I'm glad to be on the show.
Gosh, we've got so much to talk about today, and I've really enjoyed doing research for today. And I'm very, very keen to hear from you because this is it's one topic, it's multiple topics, it's all the things. So let's dig into it because there's a fair bit to cover, and I want people to stick with us because right to the end, because there's a lot of gold that you're going to be dropping today. So Mitch, before we do though, just if you can give listeners, and if they're watching on YouTube's viewers, a thumbnail sketch of your good self and what you're doing these days.
Well, I'd be happy to, and thanks for asking. So I'm an attorney here in Orange County, California. I enjoy helping creators and entrepreneurs with everything that we're doing offline and online. I like to take into consideration 36 years of litigating and trying cases and helping hundreds of companies start up. When it comes to sharing my thoughts and opinions like I will today, it's based upon that type of context. And Trevor, I'm really glad to be on this show because these are the types of shows I believe help people give themselves permission moving forward to embrace some of the technologies that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm glad I'm here. This is an important conversation, and I hope everybody that listens, actually takes a few minutes each day and starts applying some of the things that we touch upon today.
Good. It'll be information and some actionable insights as well. Ooh. Mitch, so I said in the intro, basically the elements of it. I want to break this interview up, or the discussion, into four components, but I want to kick off with understanding Web3, the Metaverse. When we bunch them together, the words are used interchangeably. So we've got Web3, the Metaverse, virtual reality, NFTs, AI, blockchain, crypto, digital wallets. How do you explain all of that, and what's the right terminology we should stick with today?
The way I look at everything you just mentioned is the way I look at a light switch on the wall. When I walk into a room, when I walk into my office, I want to be able to flip the switch, have the lights come on, and be able to see a client sitting across my desk. Okay? And so when we talk about Web3 and the Metaverse and blockchain technology, smart contracts, non-fungible tokens, NFTs, DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations, all this fancy stuff, right? To me, they're simply light switches that allow us to communicate and engage with our clients and with our customers in new ways. They allow us to reduce the expenses that we can then pass along to our clients and customers and create better experiences. So from a 30,000 foot level, I don't really want too many people, especially if you don't do this for a living, if you're not a coder or you don't own a platform where you're hosting NFTs or writing smart contract code. I want you to think of this as simply an opportunity to do all the above in a new way. And what's really important moving forward is giving yourself permission to think about providing your services through a new lens. What does the client and customer want? Once you answer that question, they want results, right? They want helpful advice if you're a lawyer. But once you figure that out, how can you deliver it in a way that's unique, memorable, and oftentimes even entertaining? And I would suggest that by embracing Web3 technology, by taking advantage and leveraging the metaverse, you can create experiences that people will continue to talk about moving forward. You'll be able to solve problems and offer products and services in new ways that your competition hasn't even thought about. So the answer to that question is, think of it as a digital light switch in a new world that's changing everything, just like the automobile industry changed the horse and buggy industry 100 plus years ago. That's the dramatic change that we're looking at, whether we like it or not. I grew up on a ranch, Trevor, 30 head of horses every day of the week. I'm a horse guy. I get it. I love horses. But, change is happening, and you can either be on the train while it's leaving the station and dictate which direction that train's traveling, or you can be left, in the dust. And what I'd like to see everybody do is kind of have fun embracing this technology and using it to build their companies and build their brands.
That embracing will be a theme for the show. In fact, a lot of what we do here on the Reputation Revolution is about, creating a digital media mindset, but now we're just eking that a little bit more forward. So if we start saying Web3 or the Metaverse is the catch-all, and then these other elements fall under, can I just throw the word at you? And the first thing that comes to mind when I say that, so we'll talk about Web3 and Metaverse in a tick, but I'm going to throw these terms at you. What's the first thing that comes into your head when I say VR, virtual reality?
So virtual reality is, to me, a virtual extension of the real world with a unique twist to reflect our business branding and our own personalities, especially as avatars. Short answer to a short question.
That's what we like. NFTs.
Non-fungible tokens, great keys, digital keys that allow you to unlock new opportunities, new transactions with clients. I don't think of NFTs as digital art, whether it's an ape or a CryptoPunk, for example. I look at it as a key that we might use to start the engine to our business moving forward from this point in time.
AI?
Artificial intelligence, boy, I'll tell you, isn't that an interesting topic right now?
Oh.
So I'm playing around with OpenAI as we speak, and I see this as being a foundation to everything we're talking about. So the metaverse is a virtual extension of who we are and what we're doing, right? Web3 is the foundation that the metaverse and everything else is being built on top of. AI is going to blend with all of the above, whether we're creating written content, digital content, whether we're researching. Right now in some of the metaverse platforms, Trevor, and you may already know this, but your listeners may not have heard this, they're creating scenarios where I can be in the metaverse and say, using AI, create a magical sunset. Put a wave over on the left. Bring my three closest friends into the space with me, and the AI engines will do all the above. And this is going to be happening in 3 to 5 years. So I look at AI as complementing everything else.
Wow. Blockchain?
Blockchain, it is the foundation to everything we're talking about, right? It's the foundation to what we're building all of these tools and resources on top of.
And while it might be a little on the nose as we record this, cryptocurrency, crypto, and I'll chuck digital wallets in there as well.
So here's something a lot of people haven't thought about. If in fact, and I think this is the case, we're going to be doing transactions in a digital world, you have to have some method or approach to doing digital transactions. Cryptocurrency, digital currency is here to stay. The topic right now, especially as a lawyer, is, for example, if we look at the FTX situation right now, right? It's like, that's what everybody's talking about. Imagine if a company that handles digital currency that was doing what FTX was doing, imagine if that was run the same way Google, Amazon, or Apple is being run and managed. Imagine if you had the same talent on top making the business decisions and complying with ethics and community standards, both at the state and federal and global level. The sky would be the limit. That's what I see happening. I see the FTX situation raising a lot of question marks, helping us move forward with getting some solutions, and then changing the entire frontier to allow more digital, safe, and easy to use transactions moving forward.
Yeah, there's so much happening in that space at the moment, isn't it? And I guess that's the thing, is that people see the negatives, but the positives are underneath. Like the negative might be the tip of the iceberg at this point in time, but there's so much going on, and that's when you said this wave's coming. It's here. It's already here.
It's here.
And there's so much happening underneath the surface that it's not going to go away, which I guess we look at evolution. So we had Web 1, we had Web 2 and Web 3. Do you want to just frame those three evolutions of the web and where we find ourselves today?
So remember, I'm a full-time trial lawyer. This is what I do, right? And my understanding is, we put up our first website in 1996, Trevor, and it changed everything my law firm was doing, okay? So I was in early, and that was just a Web 1 type of website where we're simply putting up content, almost like a billboard, right?
Yep.
Web 2 came along, and all of a sudden, we were interacting and engaging with other people. We were having real-time communications just like this. And I think for professionals and business owners that embrace this interactive platform type of scenario, they were really able to build their brand out, especially if you were early like I was. It allowed me to be that lawyer that created a brand that went from local to global. It got me on stage at Tony Robbins a couple of years in a row. It really helped me do a lot because I was early. Today, with Web 2.0, with doing everything I just said, look, everybody in the world's doing this right now.
Yeah.
And if you want to stand out, if you want to take things to the next level, then maybe look at Web 3.0, which is more of a decentralized type of concept. Now, whether or not that ever happens, in other words, instead of one company running a platform or running a service, it's decentralized across servers around the world. I don't know if that's going to happen because of some money issues and laws and regulations, but the concept is it's a decentralized type of platform that allows all of us to build communities. It allows us to be in control of the content, of our ownership of our platforms, right?
Yep.
And that's the big difference. And so what I'm seeing right now is kind of a quasi Web 2, Web 3, Web 2.5 type of scenario where business owners and creators and entrepreneurs that are embracing this technology, we're going to talk about this, I think, they can build out new brands and new business opportunities by leveraging the next opportunity that's being offered on these digital platforms. I think that's what's really key right now. I gave a keynote in Toronto a couple months ago to a bunch of lawyers from around the world. I think there were 20 different countries, 30 different states in the United States, and I talked about Web3 and the Metaverse. And at the beginning of my keynote, Trevor, what I did was I shared that video of Katie Couric, Matt Lauer, and Bryant Gumbel talking about the internet back in 1995. What is this internet thing? What is this and sign, right? And it was a minute and a half talking about that. That's the conversation we're seeing today with Web3 and all the other, talking points that you've already mentioned. And I think when we look back from 10 years from now, we're going to look back and this isn't even going to be a conversation. In other words, if you're not in these sandboxes already playing with these different technology tools, you're going to be behind. So that's why I think it's super important we have these conversations today, because hopefully it will help people, realize, hey, maybe I better pay attention to what, Mitch and Trevor are talking about. This is important stuff.
Yep.
So
that's I'm going to now the component. So thank you for outlaying all of that, of that stuff, because there's a lot to take in. But it just so people know what we're the scope of what we're talking about, and a bit of background. So I want to move the conversation more towards a personal branding perspective, and how does it relate to people who are running their business, producing their content, managing the social media, building their network and community. They're out there, pounding the virtual street, generating leads for their business. So from a personal branding perspective, why should people care? Now, I think the whole importance of staying abreast of trends and patterns, as you just mentioned, and being at the forefront, not being left behind, is obviously pretty important. But if we get down to tin tacks, how can people use it from a personal branding, reputation point of view, which will then obviously dovetail into their business?
I'm a believer that our digital identities moving forward will be more important than ever. And having said that, our digital identities moving forward will be premised upon the Web3 foundation that we talked about, blockchain, smart contracts, NFTs, the Metaverse. What's going to link all of this together will probably be something like a digital wallet, a MetaMask wallet type of device that either resides in a Chrome tab or on our phone, or something else like that hasn't really even been invented yet. But it's going to be a digital box that allows us to create an identity so that when I go on platform A, it immediately understands and brings to the conversation everything about me from that I allow it to, my contact information, my personality, how I look, my avatars, and I can go from A, B, C, D, and E platforms without any effort. It's almost automatic, right? And it's my new digital identity. And I think companies and individuals that understand the power of that, we like doing business with people who we know, like, and trust. And I don't do business with corporations because it's a corporation. I'm a victim of marketing. I'll see someone like Richard Branson. I'm like, I like this dude. I like his story. I'll fly in his airlines, whatever it might be. It has more to do with what he brings to the table and how I perceive that brand to be. And I think we're going to see that dynamic 10x to 100x moving forward. By creating these digital identities, it's going to allow us to stand out in a sea of sameness. It's going to allow us to make available on devices like this or on headsets like this. And for those of you on the podcast, I'm holding up my Oculus Quest 2 headset that we use in the Metaverse. It's going to allow us to stay connected, whether we're connecting on a phone, a tablet, a laptop, a desktop, or in the Metaverse. And so that's why it's so critically important right now. I could practice law and try cases and do business with just a legal pad. I actually could get away with doing that, right? But it's not the most efficient way to do business. It's not the way you build your brand. It's not the way people are going to find me from the other side of the world and refer a new case to me. So I think by doubling down on the digital identity and the building of a digital brand using the platforms that you've mentioned earlier, I think that's the most efficient and practical route to take moving forward when building our businesses and, when it's all said and done, maximizing our end of year revenue. Because to me, this is about business, and that does matter.
Yep. So digital identity, love that you've brought that up, because therefore that is your personal brand. And I'll highlight here that it's going to be more transparent and authentic than ever before. So, the people who are, been crafting these personas online and going through that because, they're trying to craft a persona that they think the market wants to see versus the authentic people who have been out there through social media and doing that well. Is that going to be more important than ever before? Because when we're dealing with the digital person and the real person, which I guess we are, we want to see congruence between the two.
Absolutely. The challenge, though, for example, is when I'm in the metaverse, the challenge is finding avatars that I can manipulate and change that look like me, right? That reflect my age group, that I'm comfortable with the clothing that's offered on the avatar to reflect a level of professionalism. And so what's really cool is the platforms we're talking about when building out our identity. For example, I'm now using Ready Player Me, which allows me to customize an avatar. It'll actually take my face, and AI will integrate my face on top of an avatar body. And I've got 9 or 10 different avatars, Trevor, that I can just click depending on which metaverse space I'm in. One has a business suit, so I look like a lawyer. One has a Christmas or a holiday sweater, so I can wear that when I'm in my virtual ski lodge and meeting with friends. One has me in my skateboard grunge outfit that you might find me in if I'm down at the beach, or my board shorts, if I'm out on my paddleboard, where you can actually change how your avatar comes across. And I think what's important about this is making sure that you stay true to who you are. In other words, if I'm in my board shorts in the metaverse with a lot of young Gen Zs talking about startups, I let them know who I am. They do know that I'm a lawyer, but I'm simply creating an environment where everyone's comfortable. If I had shown up in that space, just like in the real world, if I show up at a surfboard shop in my suit, it's not going to be a comfortable interaction. When I show up in my shorts, a t-shirt, and my flops, the guys and gals down there, they relate to me, right? And I think that same type of mindset in the metaverse, in Web3, I think it works really, really well. And so it's just a matter of being real, being transparent, but also using your voice, right? Everything we're talking about comes down to audio. So by being transparent in who you are, what you do, how you communicate, I think all of those things really will help you come across in a way where it'll build your brand, it'll bring in new business, and actually improve the quality of your community and your referral base.
Let's back the truck up for a tick, because this is, now we're talking avatars, and I will ask you, should people have an avatar? And clearly the answer is yes. I saw that you've got a new one popped up on social media the other day, looking very suave.
Yes.
And let's explain the metaverse for people that aren't aware of that. It's a 3D world.
A virtual world where if you're wearing a headset, for example, it actually feels like you and I, Trevor, are in the same room together. I feel like we're sitting across the desk from each other, or we're walking, down the ski slope together, or in our corporate offices. That's how real this technology is. However, the metaverses that we use, and I'm a big fan of spatial.io, are accessible to our clients using their phones, their tablets, their laptops, or their desktops. So it also can be a 2D experience. And what we're finding is this technology allows us in real time to, instead of meeting on a Zoom, I can say, Trevor, you want to bounce into my virtual office, and let's have that conversation there. I can bring up a 3D model of the defective product that harms somebody in your family. I can hand it to you in the metaverse, and we can rotate it, and you can show me what piece you believe broke that caused the injury, for example. We can have real-time translations. For example, in spatial, we can click a button, and right above our head will be real-time captioning. And if you're speaking one language and I'm speaking another, in real time, there's a translation that takes place so we can actually interact with each other. There are all types of tools that the metaverse offers when we're communicating and interacting that, frankly, I haven't ever seen before. And so for these reasons, because it helps the communication process, and because the technology is getting easier to use and it's creating better experiences, we're moving more and more of our conversations into these different virtual venues.
And for the immersive 3D experience, you need a headset like you mentioned, the Oculus headset.
Right.
They're not cheap at the moment.
Well, it's funny. The Oculus Quest 2, which is what I have, I know they've come out with a new model. It's about $300. Yep. And you're talking to somebody where my first 20 megabyte hard drive laptop computer back in the day I think I spent $5,000 for it back in the mid to late 80s, if I'm not mistaken. I remember the first fax machine we purchased back in the early 80s at our law firm, which was state of the art, by the way, was 2 to 3 times this cost, right? And not everybody had a fax machine that you could fax to. What I'm seeing is as technology advances, we're seeing the costs come down.
Yeah.
Right? And just like, I'm holding up my smartphone right now for everybody on the podcast, Peter Diamandis talked a little bit about in our smart devices right now, there's, close to $1 million worth of technology that we're walking around in our hand. Oftentimes the telephone companies oftentimes the cell phone companies are giving these things to us, right? Yeah. And they're making their money on the back end plans. So what I would encourage everyone to do is, if you're just getting started, start with your laptop or your desktop.
Yep.
And open up a free account at Spatial. You can open up accounts for free. You can set up free conference rooms. And just like you would with Zoom, start to play around a little bit with the technology and get a feel for how you can move your avatars and how you can bring in sound and how you can import a PowerPoint or screen share your screen or a YouTube video onto the big screen while you're presenting. It's really amazing technology.
And that doesn't necessarily need the headsets. That's the 2D experience that we can look at on a laptop.
Just like this particular broadcast right now. Yeah, the laptop will definitely 10x everything that I just mentioned. But what you want to do in Web3 right now, in the Metaverse, as a business owner, is you want to reduce the friction between you and the third party, whether it's a client, a customer, or an audience that you're speaking to. So you want to make sure that you make access as easy as possible. So the platforms we're using, Web2 users can easily tap into the power of these platforms, right? Or a Web3 user with an NFT that's like that, like I said, it's a digital key or a digital ticket, can simply link their NFT to my Metaverse space and have access that way. They don't have to enter their username or their password. So there's just all types of ways to reduce friction so that more people can be introduced to this technology.
Now, with this 3D world, 2D world sort of thing, it reminds me of the old Second Life, which was kind of, I don't think it was ever big. It was big with the geeks. It was pretty nerdy back in the day. That was around 2009, 2010. And so that was that universe, the Metaverse, probably Mark 1. And in those days, people they went on and they weren't themselves. So their avatars in those days were to make yourself look glamorous and to hide behind this avatar. Do you think that that's not going to happen today as we move towards the Metaverse, that the push to be your real self is overwhelming? And I'm talking about from a personal branding point of view now. So when you're building your avatar, your digital identity, it should be all based on you, and resist the temptation to create a whole work of fiction.
I think it depends, Trevor. I think it depends on who you are and what you're doing and what venues you're appearing in. And so what we're seeing with Gen Z, what we're seeing with Web3 users is they actually enjoy using different avatars. Yep. Many that aren't even human beings, right? They're creatures. And this is how they're comfortable with interacting. And It's a little uncomfortable for some of us that have been around the block a little bit, like me. I'm a little bit older and traditional old school business guy. But having said that, there's a certain mindset that today's users are comfortable with, and in fact, they expect. Now, having said that, from a legal standpoint, I think even what's more important is making sure that you're being transparent and you're being ethical and honest. And what I mean by that is, if I have a meeting with you in the Metaverse, how do I know that's really you behind the avatar? How do I know that you're not a competitor picking my brain or appearing in a board of directors meeting and it's not really you? And so what we need to do, what I think people should focus on, is do what you're comfortable with doing when it comes to avatar selections. Just be real, be you, right? Having said that, do your due diligence. Understand, who are you actually talking to? Who are you doing business with? Who are you meeting with? Because reputation's everything right now. And we've both seen this both in Web 2 and recently in Web 3. And it only takes a moment for your reputation or brand to be destroyed. So do your due diligence to understand and appreciate who's in the room with you, and then be careful with what you say and how you say it. I think for me, those are even more important issues moving forward than what color shirt we wear or whether I decide to show up as an elephant, a monkey, or a Mitch, right? To me, that's what's important from a business perspective.
And I guess it's a bit like if you used a social media parallel. On LinkedIn, you are yourself. That's it. That's your professional person, the real you, the photo you want, all of that sort of stuff. That's how you want to show up in the world. But you might be on Twitter and you don't want to be as you because you don't want to build your brand on Twitter, but you just want to be involved in Twitter and have conversations and not tie it back to you and your company or your business. And hopefully you're still playing nice behind the veil. But I guess it's the similar sort of thing. You could have a couple, but the main what we're talking about here is reputation, personal brand. You are who you are, whether you're in the metaverse, whether you're on Twitter, on LinkedIn, in person, on stage, on a podcast. It's about that congruency, that consistency, because the lack of consistency on all of those touch points builds distrust.
It really does. I would even highlight it comes down to the experience that you're providing a client or a customer. It was raining in Southern California, and we had rarely rains here in Southern California. And this is 6 months ago, and we had 4 early morning meetings cancel. They were coming down from Los Angeles to meet with me. 2 of them were tech startups, and my front office said, if you'd like to meet with Mitch in our virtual office space, he'd be happy to meet with you. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds great. They had headsets. I used my headset. And before we popped in, we put their logo up on the wall. We put their latest YouTube marketing video, just a couple of clicks playing behind me, behind my desk. So when they appeared in the office space, it was customized out to what they're doing and what's important to them, right? So I started talking and doing my spiel, and in 60 seconds, one of the potential clients I was meeting with, Mitch, stop talking. Now, this is his avatar. Mitch, stop talking. You're our guy. What do we need to do next, right? So in other words, just by creating a unique experience, all else being equal, obviously you have to know what you're doing and you have to be able to add value. But I think by creating this unique experience, whether it's through an avatar, whether it's through a unique virtual office or conference room or environment, right? So I'll meet clients in our virtual conference room. And when we're done, I'll say, Trevor, listen, you're a snow skier, I'm a snow skier. Would you like to check out our virtual ski chalet? And let me buy you a hot toddy. And you're like, that sounds like fun. I share a link right there in the virtual space. You click on it, and we're in this beautiful ski chalet up in the Alps. And we teleport just like that, and I can see your avatar smiling because you're like, this is really cool. And we start talking about snowboarding and skiing and where you enjoy skiing, whether it's skiing, surfing, whether it's going to the French Riviera, which is one of our venues, whether it's being in a penthouse over Dubai. There are all types of ways to create these new memories and these new connections that you just don't have in a typical Zoom space. So I think for business owners and professionals that get this and start having fun with it, I think the sky's the limit. And so that's why I'm so excited about this technology.
Yeah, it's so in the immersive side, the facial expressions appear in the 2D on the laptop sort of thing. You won't see that, but you'll still experience something that's pretty out of this world.
It's, what's amazing is in the 2D on a laptop or desktop, when I'm speaking, you'll see my avatar's hands and arms moving. When I'm consulting with companies transitioning into the metaverse, we teach them how to manipulate and move their avatars while they're speaking, much like I would in a courtroom, from the left side to the right side of the jury box, much like you might do on stage when you're speaking to a large audience. We're using anchor points on the stage. You can do the same thing with your avatar. So even in 2D, yes, your hands are moving, the avatar's head's moving. When you put on a headset with the different cameras, especially in the new MetaQuest headset, your lips are moving, your cheekbones are reflecting the emotions that you're sharing through your facial expressions. Now, the downside to what we're talking about is apparently 2 million different data points are being tracked every 20 minutes by Meta if you're using their headset. And, that's a whole nother issue or conversation maybe for another time. So while we're also interacting in a way where you really feel like you're standing next to me and I'm using my facial expressions to make my point, there's somebody else that's monitoring all of this too for marketing purposes. What am I paying attention to? What are my eyes focusing on? What venues am I going into? So there's a lot on the table that I think as consumers,
might have to give up.
We still need to, give consideration to how much do we really want to play in some of these sandboxes.
So this was a magnificent segue to component number 3 that I wanted to cover in this, and that was the legal ramifications. And from that, we're talking privacy, security, things that we need to be aware of. So you've painted a rosy picture of some amazing technology, but also the humanity of it all and how we can interact with people at a greater level than what we can currently online. So you've just outlined there that if you're using Meta for people that are unaware is Facebook. It's so we've got the Meta and the Metaverse. Clearly, Mark Zuckerberg was trying to own the Metaverse and came under people laughed at him a fair bit when they came out with that, but we've got to live with it. So Meta own Oculus and one of the biggest selling headsets. So, but they won't be the only headset one. So that's obviously the tracking and all of that. And tracking is going to be across all the things. One question that springs to mind, and feel free to go broad on this because there's a lot of legal issues that you're across on a day-to-day basis. But when you're going into, as you said, you're going into a boardroom or you're inviting people in or whatever, are these virtual rooms safe? Can anyone just walk in? How does that work?
So the answer to that question is very similar to Zoom. You can have a public Zoom or a private password protected Zoom. So I'm personally comfortable with the private venues that we set up. And even in a public venue, when somebody walks in, Trevor, I can bounce them, exit them for 24 hours. You can see who's coming in, who's coming and going. That's not a real issue. But there are some legal issues that I would love everyone to pay attention to. Before we do that, let me point out one of the most exciting experiences I've had in the Metaverse so far has to do with a client of mine who's now a friend of mine. His name's Matt Hendrick, and he's an artist. And he was in a bad automobile accident in his early 20s. And he can't walk, he can't move his arms. He paints with a paintbrush in his mouth, and he paints beautiful art, which, as you can imagine, fast forward to today, are now becoming NFTs. And what my son Garrett and I did is we created a virtual gallery with all of Matt's NFTs. And as we were doing a showing, Matt said, "This is amazing. I love walking through my gallery." And we're in the Metaverse. I love walking through my gallery and sharing my work with all of you. He's never been able to do that before. And to me, that just kind of warmed my heart. It's like, oh my goodness, it's opening up so many new doors for people, right? Yeah. Now, along those same lines, though, with these doors opening, there are a lot of different legal issues. And the issues that are jumping out to me that I'm seeing people struggle with, either unintentionally or even, with a wrongful mindset, have to do with intellectual property rights. The IP rights, at least here in the United States, that apply offline, copyright, trademarks, things like this, they all apply online also. And people need to be cognizant of intellectual property rights, both at the national level here in the United States and globally. When we're playing in a Web3 world, when we're doing business in a Web3 world, you have to think about us doing so on a global basis. There are global laws and rules and regulations that we need to pay attention to. And it can be scary. It can be scary for a creator or an entrepreneur to, try to figure out, what are my rights and remedies? What do I have to comply with? I'm not just selling a widget in California. I've got people around the world through my Metaverse art gallery purchasing my items. So I think intellectual property is a big issue people need to pay attention to. I also feel like we need to pay attention to documenting and using written agreements or written contracts. Now, whether or not these are digital documents that people can digitally sign, like DocuSign, through a Web3 or Metaverse environment, or we need to incorporate into our terms of service agreements, our TOS agreements, different terms and conditions to protect our clients. I think those are the big areas I'm seeing right now, Trevor, that I want more entrepreneurs and business owners and creators to pay attention to, because it's getting real. I mean, people are catching up on when there's a violation of the law. We're seeing every day new lawsuits being filed. We're seeing new government entities enforcing regulations, especially in the cryptocurrency space. I think that's a good thing. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. So one of the things I'm seeing a lot of has to do with a lot of really creative entrepreneurs who I know or I represent. They'll do something without thinking it through.
Yep.
Okay. And that's not okay anymore. It's never been okay, but I think more so than ever, moving forward from the day we're doing this interview, moving forward in time, we really have to make sure we're covering our legal bases and also our financial bases. I think every successful startup I've represented over the last 3 decades has had a really good accountant or CPA, certified public accountant, in their corner. I think with Web3 and even with Web2, it's never been more important to have someone who understands the tax requirements of everything that we're talking about, for 2 reasons. Number one, so you don't violate tax laws at the state, federal, and international levels. And then number 2, you can actually take advantage of existing tax laws to minimize your taxes and maximize your end-of-year net profits. So I think it's really important that we kind of take a step back and really look at this from an adult perspective and realize the laws, the taxes, the regulations, all of this stuff is really important, and we need to get up to speed depending on our occupation, our industry, or the products and services that we're selling.
And I guess that's the key, because we're in so many different industries, and I guess when we hear about NFTs and things like that, it was the artwork that people are selling and things like that, but really we've gone way beyond that, and the products and services, and you can run events, you can charge people to come to an eventer, yes, in a 3D world, and all of these things. It's how that's managed, and no doubt, there are I guess financial gateways and payment systems and everything else that will, there'll be a lot of technology to come in and support a lot of that. But it's really just having an awareness without letting it, I guess, stop you doing anything, because that's the key too. You don't want to be, paralyzed for fear of that.
We're early. We're all learning together right now.
Yeah.
Platforms are coming and going right now, and I think what's really important is to get involved and start learning everything that we've talked about. And if a platform disappears tomorrow, have things set up where it's not hosting your digital assets. In other words, you're still in control of your digital assets, whether it's artwork, whether it's your digital products and services, whether it's your cryptocurrency. And so if platform A goes down, you can easily transition to platforms B, C, and D. It's not that difficult to do, especially once you get up to speed with how to use, for example, a MetaMask wallet or a cold wallet like a Ledger. So you're disconnecting your digital assets from the internet so that people can't have access to your NFTs. They can't have access to your cryptocurrency. There are just some new fundamental safety steps that we all need to take in moving forward. And the one thing I didn't mention earlier is I think it's really important that people do business in the Web3 and Metaverse worlds as here in the United States, for example, as corporations or limited liability companies. That's the other thing. It's very easy to do everything we've talked about. You can set up a company in 15 minutes. You can set up and start selling things in the Metaverse within 30 minutes. But, you don't want to do it as an individual. You don't want to expose business liabilities, your personal assets to business liabilities. And there are certain very smart ways to leverage, at least here in the States. I'm not sure about Australia, which entities you use there. But here in the States, by using corporations and limited liability companies, you can minimize your exposure to your personal assets. You can maximize tax deductions and other deductions. And so that's the other thing, is people need to do business when they're opening these accounts as legal entities. I think that's super smart to do.
That's a good tip there, and yes, it's all the same here. We have proprietary limited companies, and I guess the UK and other European companies would be very similar in that regard. But that's a good insight there to, if you're going to do business, to at least do it through your own company. So that makes perfect sense. I guess the other part of it is that so where you've just been there's a book that's come out just this week, just today, really, hasn't it? It's
this morning,
this morning. Although in Australia we're a day ahead of you, so I got it yesterday. But Belonging to the Brand by our mutual friend Mark Schaefer, who's been on the show, and Mark is a best-selling author, business book author, and one of the top marketing bloggers in the world. And he's just written I can't tell you too much about it because I haven't read it at this point when we're recording this, but it's called Belonging to the Brand. And you and your son Garrett mentioned in chapter 11 on Web3. And a lot of it is around, obviously the book's around community. If I go back to a personal branding perspective, and if you're out there creating content and growing your network and your community, or your village of supporters, I like to say it, then this sort of stuff is going to be super important, because you can get closer to, as you're creating content and stuff, you can get closer to your audience than ever before and not have a Mark Zuckerberg in the way. Do you just want to just quickly touch on that, because it is very much a relevant thing to people who are building an audience, and how close you can get to that audience now?
And that's the advantage of Web3. If done correctly, we can own and manage and administer our own content. We don't have to rely on a particular corporation or entity. And when I talk about the metaverse, by the way, I'm not really referring to Meta or Facebook's metaverse. There are literally hundreds of metaverses out there that are available. We're using 4 or 5 of them. None of them are Meta, just so that you know. And I want everyone to know, if you're hung up on Meta and being, the big gorilla dominating this market, understand that there are options out there that are really, really good and effective. We were really excited to be included in Mark's book. I think this book's important because he focuses on the things that you talk about on your podcast in each episode. And he talks about community and branding, and how that's changed, and what he sees moving forward in time. And we originally started talking about this when we spoke at CEX in Scottsdale, Arizona. I want to say earlier this year. It might have been the latter part of last year. I don't know, Trevor. Everything's blending together now in this crazy world, right? Probably about 8 months ago. And I was talking about Web3 and Metaverse issues for creators in the creator economy. And we started talking about this. And Garrett came out with me. Garrett graduated from the University of Southern California Marshall School of Business, and was starting to look for a job, wasn't sure what he wanted to do. So we started Maneuver together. We co-founded this company to help traditional companies maneuver or transition into the metaverse, consulting agency. And it was a lot of fun just between you and me. I think I spoke more with Garrett when we were doing this back in the day than the last 4 years of college. Between football games and fraternity parties, right? There wasn't a whole lot of conversation. And I'm happy to say, by the way, as we were talking before we went on the air, I'm very excited that Garrett accepted a full-time position with VaynerMedia in Los Angeles as a post-creative strategist. He's loving every moment of it, Trevor. And so that's where he's spending his time and attention right now. But we were talking with Mark in Scottsdale. And long story short, that conversation circled back to being interviewed for this book. And I think what Mark was realizing is, look, this is new for all of us. This is the Web3 and the metaverse, regardless of the negative press you see out there, regardless of downsides that we talked about, whether it's privacy or the complexity of law. The reality is, when you look at the numbers, when you look at the amount of money that's being spent by every single Fortune 500 company here in the United States. When you look at the transition that different companies and the different outcomes that are available, whether you're in the entertainment field, whether you're in sports, whether you have a business and you're expanding your brand, this is where the attention is. This is where the tremendous upside potential is. And so all of that comes down to leveraging the technology while at the same time maximizing your ability to communicate and build your brand, resulting in a community that's win-win for everyone. And I think that's what that chapter and frankly the whole book's about. So it came out this morning here in the States, which is cool that you brought up the time difference. And then the book, both hardback, paperback, and Audible, dropped January 9th here in the United States.
So by the time this goes to air, the book will be out, and we will be talking to Mark on the show as well, dissecting all that. So certainly tune in for that one. Just the fourth component that I wanted to cover, sure. Mitch, is really around. It's so, and look, we've sort of touched on it. You've certainly touched on it. The need to continue to stay abreast of what's going on. I mean, if you're in business, you want to build your brand, your reputation, all of that sort of stuff. There's so much happening that we need to stay abreast of and see trends and patterns. And sure, we don't need to be at the forefront, but we need to be aware of it and start, you use the word experiment and have fun. About staying curious, which you've done across, as you said, you've done Web 1.0, 2.0, and now you're in 3.0. And you won't mind me saying you've been around the block once or twice, around the virtual block many times. But you're still very curious, and it's great to hear the enthusiasm in your voice around all of this, these topics. It's so important, isn't it, just to start and experiment and have fun. And we've covered this a number of times on the podcast.
That's what keeps life exciting. So I'm excited and interested about all of this because I'm watching what's happening. One of the advantages, Trevor, of being a lawyer is a lot of the things that everybody sees on their phone or their desktop, whether it's advertising, whether it's new products, whatever it might be, a lot of this stuff has come across our desk a year ago. I mean, everything needs to be approved and considered for the legal reasons we've already talked about before it's put out to market. And I see the trends. I know what's coming down the pipeline. I've never seen more opportunity in 3 decades of practicing law, 4 decades of being an entrepreneur than I'm seeing right now because of this topic. And I just feel like it's changing the world, whether you like it or not. It's changing the world, number one. Okay, number two, I'm hard pressed to find a product or service that can't be integrated rather easily into the Web3 and Metaverse spaces. This naturally complements what many of us are already doing. I think by spending 15 or 20 minutes a day exploring on LinkedIn different leaders in this space, what are they talking about? What's got them excited? From a legal perspective, what is Mitch raising a red flag about this week on this particular topic? And just absorbing it slowly and carefully, right? Baby steps. I think we can take baby steps in Web3 to the point where we'll eventually go from crawling to walking and walking to running. And the question for everybody, Trevor, is, are they going to be running 5 years from now while everyone else is still learning how to crawl? Or will they be waiting to learn how to crawl way down the line? And I just don't want to see that happen to anybody. I don't want to my time is the most important thing in the world to me. I don't like wasting time at all. And what I'm doing and what you see me doing is focusing my valuable time on something that I see changing the world. And I'm telling you, though, I had the same challenge with lawyers with social media, Trevor, back in the day. It's like, they're like, Mitch, I remember the first live videos. Why would you do that? What if you say something wrong? What if you mispronounce a word? What if something happens and your live video goes out, right? These were all real considerations back in the day. if you know me, I got to the point where, okay, the guy that's asking me to do a live video was the co-founder of StubHub, a Stanford grad. His name's Jeff Floor, brilliant individual. This is his product, right? And if he feels comfortable enough with running with Spreecast, you know what? I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to do it. Within 2 weeks of being on live video, I'm on shows with Peter Diamandis, Katie Couric, Gary Vaynerchuk. I mean, anybody that you know I've been on these shows with, that wouldn't have happened had I not given myself permission to take a risk, right? A calculated risk. What's the worst thing that can happen? Exactly. I always put my foot in my mouth, so I'm not worried about that. If the video disconnects, then it disconnects. It's not the end of the world. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. But what I did is, by being early, it allowed me a distinct advantage to building my brand. I think the same mindset applies in today's world. The entrepreneurs and the business owners and agencies that give themselves permission today to start leveraging the power in these platforms are the ones that are positioning themselves for maximizing, their community and their brand not too far down the line. And that's why I'm so excited about it. That's why you hear the excitement in my voice.
Fantastic. And just before we finish up, you are on a lot of these channels. You experiment, and at some point it gets all too much. I can't be on everything, sort of thing. I noticed that you're streamlining a number of things. You are off Twitter at the moment. You've been a big Twitter fan for a very long time. You've got a terrific following there. Just walk us through that. Have you joined what's called Post.news? Did I read that?
I have, and I did, and I'm trying out some different approaches. I mentioned earlier, time is the most valuable asset, I think, for not only me, for many of my close friends. And it can be overwhelming, even with leveraging technology, different platforms to help with our posts and help monitor our inboxes. It can be overwhelming. So what I'm trying to do is streamline to consolidate my efforts, right? So officially, what I said is, as of January 1st, 2023, I'm done with Twitter and a couple of other platforms. I'm not sure that's the case now. I may change my mind. You know what, Trevor? So what? If I want to change my mind, I'm going to change my mind. This is not like I'm doing a random poll as to whether or not I should be running a company, right? Relying upon the feedback of complete strangers and bots to make that decision. I'm not going to mention any names. I'm just saying it's okay to change our minds. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to focus on what time can we spend on which platforms that maximize our chances of building a meaningful win-win community and also improving and expanding our brand. And what I've noticed is many of the traditional Web2 platforms are oversaturated, they're crowded, it's just noisy. And there's a lot of nonsense being said on these platforms. So what we're doing, Trevor, is we kind of backed up, and where I am right now, like as of today, and this is December of 2022, right? For me, all right, is I am doubling down and tripling down on LinkedIn because I think it's an amazing business platform.
It is.
I'm on Post, kind of checking that out, but we'll see how the traction picks up. It's an interesting platform, and it's new. And you and I have been on a lot of new platforms, probably together, where they're not around anymore.
Yep,
correct. But you learn by being on these platforms, right? And so I don't feel like it's a waste of time. I'm learning some new approaches, some new communication techniques on these platforms. But what I am focusing on right now is LinkedIn. I'm focusing on some Discord channels that we're building out, and I'm focusing on continuing to expand our reach within several different Metaverse spaces, primarily spatial.io. So that's where our time and attention is. And then we're sprinkling on top of all of that social audio and social video. And if we talk a year from now, it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. I don't know, right? I don't know what's going to happen. But when I tried to completely back off the social, which was really nice, I had a lot of friends reach out because, I'm pretty vocal about things that I believe in. And I had some friends reach out like, Mitch, you have to continue sharing your voice on this particular topic. And I didn't put as much weight on that as I probably should have. And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I don't need anybody pushing me off a platform. If I have something to say, then we need to be there. You have to show up to say something, right? That's why I became a trial lawyer. So I'm still juggling and struggling with what we're going to do, but I'm having a ball doing it, and I don't care what anybody says. And this is the greatest time in the world that's creating the most opportunity for all of us moving forward. So every day is a new day. Every day on the top side of the grass is a good day to be alive, Trevor. And digital or no digital, this has just been a blast. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Look, I've really loved it, Mitch. You've opened my eyes on a lot of things, and I just love that theme of get out and experiment. So for people who are going to do that, what is one or two things? I know you said sort of tinker around the edges, 10, 15 minutes a day sort of thing, but on where's the best place for people to start to learn? Obviously, connect with you on LinkedIn would be the number one thing, but where do you recommend people sort of look at from a general sense?
I think you have to actually show up with your shovel and pail in the digital sandbox and get your hands dirty. So I would suggest everyone go over to spatial.io, spatial.io. I have no financial interest in the company. And the reason I like that metaverse venue, Trevor, is because it's built around community. Okay, it's actually focused on artists and creators, but there's plenty of room for everyone. And I think by getting in there and creating some free spaces and getting a feel for how to communicate and how to move your avatar, if you have a headset, connect your headset, get comfortable in those spaces. I will tell you my blog, which is mitchjackson.com, that's not my law firm website. That's my space where I talk about all of this stuff, where I share different ways to leverage the power that some of these platforms offer through the eyes of someone that's kind of been there and done that. So I think if I wanted to get up to speed on everything we're talking about, I would definitely browse the blog post at mitchjackson.com. I would absolutely take some of those techniques and apply them in spatial.io and give yourself permission to try new things. Don't take yourself so seriously, right?
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, Mitch, for that. People can track you down at mitchjackson.com. Definitely get in contact with Mitch on LinkedIn, and who knows, rock up to one of his multiple metaverses, particularly the one in the snow, given that we're about to go into summer here in Australia as well. So thank you, Mitch, for your time. Very much appreciated, sir.
Thank you, Trevor. It's been my pleasure, and I'll see you in the metaverse.
The reputation economy is here. The world today needs more genuine, credible experts and leaders to stand up and share their experience, their wisdom, their stories and ideas. Are you in?